My favorite breakfast is avocado toast, but avocado has no protein. It has maybe like 1 gram. I'll give it a little bit. It's 1 gram of protein, which isn't enough for a breakfast. So to jazz that up so it can fit into like a nice balanced breakfast, I like to take the avocado and mash in edamame or sometimes even green peas into the avocado. And now it becomes a much more rich source of protein. So you're not just getting avocado by itself. It's delicious but not super protein rich. Put it on some wheat bread, sprinkle some nutritional yeast, maybe some hemp seeds. I also do like to add tempeh bacon on top of it. So just like really loading up those plant based proteins. And that's a perfect way to start your day.
You're listening to the Plant Based Diet Podcast, where we talk about all things plant-based. I'm Esther Garfin, the host of this show and founder of Alternative Food Network. Join me and my amazing array of guests who are a mix of healthcare professionals, industry executives, and people with an interesting story to tell about their plant-based journey. Let us help you with your journey wherever you're at to learn the what, why, and how to eat plant-based. Hello, welcome back to the show. Today we're talking about protein, specifically plant-based protein, which is a popular topic among those wanting to eat a plant-forward diet, but who aren't quite sure how you eat a plant-based diet and get enough protein. And if you hang on till later in the episode, you'll also get some practical plant-based meal ideas from my guest. My guest today is Rhyan Geiger, otherwise known as the Phoenix Vegan Dietitian. Rhyan is an award-winning plant-based dietitian who helps people enjoy more plant-based foods through media channels and writing. She's the author of Vegan Slow Cooking for Two and has been featured in various magazines and has appeared on local Arizona news channels. Rhyan graduated from Arizona State University with a BS in dietetics and completed her dietetic internship at Georgia Southern University. Welcome to the show, Rhyan. How are you? So nice to meet you.
Yes, I am so happy to be here and talking about a very hot topic that I know a lot of plant based eaters come across.
Yes, absolutely. But before we get into this, I just want to say I was on your website today and I saw part of your team. You have a picture of your dog, Leonard.
I do, yes.
It was so cute.
I was just I talk about my dog all the time, so I can't say I was just talking to someone because I talk about him to everyone, but he is a puggle. I'm such a pug person, and he is the cutest little boy and the best coworker or teammate that I could ask for.
I love dogs. I have also my Lola. She usually is actually in the room recording with me, but she's not here right now. Hopefully she won't scratch on the door and come in and make noise.
Mine too.
But it was very cute. So I just wanted to tell you that before we start. But now on to protein. So the reason this episode came about, a friend of mine said, I'm really interested in trying this plant-forward diet, but I get stuck with protein. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do an episode on it. So I wanted to ask you first off, can a person get enough protein on a plant-based diet?
Yes. End of episode. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. There are so many plant-based foods that have protein in them, great plant-based protein sources. It is, I like to say it's kind of how we're raised. Like I'm from the Midwest, so protein to me was only meat, potatoes, corn. That was like how you structured a plate. So the protein was meat. And then I was like, oh, nothing else has protein because I'm so used to just meat being the protein. So that's kind of where I think a lot of the misconception comes from is just thinking meat is the only source of protein, but there are so many plant-based sources of protein.
And you're a dietitian. So from the words of a dietitian, how much protein does one need in a day?
So to find the amount of protein that you should use, you take your weight in pounds and you need to convert it to kilograms. And once you have it in kilograms, you do that by dividing by 2.2. Once you have it in kilograms, then you're going to multiply by 0.9 or 1. And that's going to give you your baseline. And then you'll skew it up if you're doing more exercise or if your protein needs are a little bit higher. But that's where you're going to start from.
Okay. And I know when we had our little pre-call, you were talking about the importance of amino acids in all of this. So I was wondering if you could explain to our listeners what amino acids are and what plant-based foods have them.
Yes, amino acids are going to be the building blocks of all proteins. There are 20 amino acids. There are nine that are essential, which means essential amino acids means your body can't make them. So you have to get them from food sources. And examples of that in plant based foods are going to be soy products, edamame, tofu, tempeh, things of that nature are going to have all nine. But it is important to note that you don't have to have them all in one meal. That has been debunked. Lucky for us, it's been debunked. So now it's just trying to get all nine throughout the day. So you have a more wide range of options and variety throughout the day that can help you reach all of those nine essential amino acids. And if you want a quick way to do it, you could use those soy products. Other things like quinoa also have all of the nine essential amino acids, but even stacking things like beans and rice together, when you put them together, then you have a complete protein. So, say you have like beans at lunch and then rice at dinner, you've hit your essentials for the day. So, it's not as hard to do as what it once was thought.
And then there's also some unexpected plant-based sources of protein. Can we go through some of those, which I learned recently as well? And I'm just curious to know what sources you can share with us.
Yeah, so one of my favorites is nutritional yeast. I know as plant based eaters, we're always dumping that on literally anything. That has 5 grams of protein. So it's a protein booster, as I like to call them. So you can add it on to literally anything and it adds 5 grams. Another cool one, nuts and seeds, of course, are great protein boosters. And then surprisingly, some grains. So we usually think of grains as carbohydrate, but they also have a little bit of protein in them too, like quinoa specifically as a great plant-based source of protein.
So what I was referring to earlier, what I just learned about, we have another show called Culinary Medicine Recipe, and in that show we interviewed the founder of a einkorn company, and einkorn is an ancient grain that has protein. It's a protein source. So that's when I learned that there are grains and other products that we think of as carbs, which actually have protein in them.
Mhm.
I don't think people think like that.
Yeah, yeah. For plant-based eating, when I speak to my patients, it makes it confusing because they can be carbohydrates, but they also have proteins. And a lot of plant-based foods are like that, where they're not just like one thing. They're two things, sometimes three things. So that's kind of the beauty of plant-based eating because they're not just one category of food. You're getting so many different nutrients and they're very vast.
Well, that should help. For those who are stuck in this, well, what I don't know where to get plant-based protein from. That should help a lot because that expands your options.
Mhm. Yeah, there's so many options. And everything has a little bit of protein. It's mostly like finding something that has it's like a good solid plant-based protein like tofu or like beans, like lentils. And fun fact for everyone listening, the new dietary guidelines for 2025 to 2030 are coming out and they've moved beans and lentils from the vegetable category into the proteins. So they're like even our dietary guideline governing bodies are recognizing like, oh, hey, there's something great about the legumes. Let's put them into the plant-based proteins instead of viewing them as a vegetable. Vegetables are great, but they're more protein than they are a vegetable. So it's
Okay,
amazing, I would say.
that's great. All right, and then I promised people in my introduction that at some point in the episode we would be talking about practical meal ideas. So maybe now that people have an idea of where they can source their plant-based proteins, could you give us some examples of maybe like a breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack so they get an idea?
Yeah. So my favorite breakfast is avocado toast, but avocado has no protein. It has maybe like 1 gram. I'll give it a little bit. It's 1 gram of protein, which isn't enough for a breakfast. So to jazz that up so it can fit into like a nice balanced breakfast, I like to take the avocado and mash in edamame or sometimes even green peas into the avocado. And now it becomes a much more rich source of protein. So you're not just getting avocado by itself. It's delicious, but not super protein rich. Put it on some wheat bread, sprinkle some nutritional yeast, maybe some hemp seeds. I also do like to add tempeh bacon on top of it. So just like really loading up those plant based proteins. And that's a perfect way to start your day. It has a great amount of protein. You've got healthy fats and a whole grain. So that's where I start with breakfast.
Can I just ask you, it might sound like a dumb question. Is there such a thing as too much protein? Like you just said, you loaded that avocado toast up. Can you have too much protein on there?
You could. With the research is a little bit fuzzy on how much protein is too much protein for a generally healthy person. If you have like chronic kidney disease or some chronic condition where protein should be limited, you can definitely overdo it much more easily than like if you were a healthy adult. If you get too much protein, the only thing that would come from that is potentially having too many calories per day, which can lead to weight gain or your body just not using it as effectively as a smaller amount of protein, but that number is different for every single person. And there's a specific equation for it, but I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. But you can get too much, but the repercussions of that aren't anything to be worried about unless you have a chronic condition.
Okay, great. That's very helpful. All right. Lunch.
Okay. Lunch. I love a good bowl, a good dump everything into something to make a meal. So I use the My Vegan plate, which is like making 50% of your meal some type of fruit or vegetable. A quarter of it is protein, a quarter of it is a whole grain. So I kind of just pick one from each category and put it in a bowl, add a little bit of sauce to it, and call it a day and go. And that helps create a lot of great balance with the meal too, and helps hit those dietary guidelines for like vegetables and grains and all of those items. So I would say like just a bowl. I love a bowl with like quinoa and sweet potatoes. I love avocado. I'm in Phoenix, so like avocado
Oh,
is like
right. Yeah.
something that I eat probably almost too much, but I love it. It's a lot of healthy fats. So that's kind of what my typical lunch recommendation would be is something quick. We usually are all at work or, busy at lunch period, but making time for it by just throwing them all together.
And dinner.
Dinner. Oh, dinner. I love dinner. I love cooking dinner. I love, like just being in the kitchen. For dinner, I like a nice meal. I'm very much a like prep ahead type of person too. So if I can throw everything in like a slow cooker, crock pot, Instapot, air fryer, done. I just love doing that. So that's what I recommend too for dinner, maybe making like a chili or tofu pad thai. So good. Having like the brown rice noodles, you've got a little bit of brown rice there, adding tofu to it, a peanut sauce for healthy fats. You can add edamame as well if you wanted to toss that in there. Lots of veggies can be hidden as well.
Would you but okay, what would you make in a slow cooker? I have a slow cooker and I like it when I use it, but what would you make in there?
Yeah, you can make anything in there. I have a book, my first cookbook. It came out in 2021. It's Vegan Slow Cooking for Two, and there are
Yes.
85 different recipes. So many things you can do. My favorite is making a tofu pad thai in there as well because it's quick and easy. But chili soups, French toast recipes, an overnight oatmeal in a crock pot. So good. That's one of my favorites
Ah.
from the book. But yeah, there's so many things that you could use your slow cooker for.
And when it comes to tofu, I'm going to guess you're using a firm or extra firm tofu.
Super firm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the firmer
Because
the better.
otherwise, yeah, because otherwise it'll get all mushy, I would guess.
Yeah. Sometimes I will do, the base of the recipe and then air fry the tofu. If you like it more crunchy, that's a great way to
Hmm.
still make it fast because that texture is really important. So if you're like, "I want something that's got a little bit more bite to it," you could just throw it in an air fryer or put it on a pan really quick.
Okay. Okay. That's a great suggestion. And what about snacks? that are, not full of, like, not processed food snacks that are actually good for us.
Yeah, so snacks, my general guideline is at least two food groups. So picking either protein plus fat, protein plus carbohydrate, fat plus protein, and that helps create a nice balanced snack that helps keep you feeling full for longer. And my favorite that fits that is so boring, but it's so good. It's just an apple and peanut butter with a little bit of cinnamon on it. I just love it.
I recently made these, I guess they're protein balls because the recipe called for a peanut butter, but I actually used an almond butter. And I thought they might fall apart, but it was okay. And it was with oats and dates, like a
Mm.
date paste. So that's probably combining everything you just said into one. But they're really good. So if anyone, has a recipe for these energy balls, you should try it. Everyone in my family liked it. My friends liked it. I think it's a big hit.
Mhm. Yeah, but I love ball recipes, and that one sounds really good, especially with dates. Dates are just I feel like dates make everything taste better.
Yeah. And then I threw in some mini chocolate chips.
Classic.
So, because, I love chocolate too. So, and any other good recipe tips for people?
I think with plant-based eating, just trying a new recipes, one of my favorite things to do is finding an old recipe that's not vegan and trying to make it vegan. I just think that's so fun and it allows creativity. And then it also allows, like, if you want something and you're like, I'm keeping it plant based, but I really miss XYZ, it gives you that creative freedom in the kitchen to find a new way to make something. Or maybe it's a whole new recipe that you've got to come up with to make it taste the right way. And things like that just become really fun.
And what would you say to the person who is new to this and they're just worrying about their protein intake? What would you tell them?
I would say this is always my go-to recommendation is just do a food recall. That would be, but it could also be a catalog of your food. Do a food recall to see how much protein you're actually getting and how far off you are from what your goals would be. Because sometimes you'd be surprised at how close you actually are to your protein intake with the foods you're eating. And if you find that you are low, you'll know how many grams you're off by, and then you can make appropriate adjustments. It's kind of hard if you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm getting enough protein, and then just almost shooting in the dark of like, I don't know how many grams of protein I'm getting, so I'm going to add this and I'm going to add that, and then it just becomes more confusing. Whereas if you take the information, put it into like a calculator, there's so many apps or sites that you can use just to see what your baseline is, and then build off of that is where I start.
And then should people then have a scale? Like how do you know when you do that calculation that you mentioned earlier? Okay, so you get a number of how much protein you should have in a day, let's say. But how does that translate? Do you need a scale?
You don't have to have a scale. You could use a scale for like weighing, but I just take the app, any type of app, and just scan the barcodes and put the serving size I had to get a rough idea of how much protein would be in that product. So if it's tofu, I would take my phone with the app, some type of nutrition tracking app, scan the barcode, say I had one serving or two servings, whatever it was, and it will auto calculate based on the nutrition facts panel how much protein I had already. So then it adds it up for me, and I can see at the end of the day how much protein I had versus how much that calculation told me I needed and what I'm off by.
Uh-huh. So then if you're having beans, you take the can and scan it as that.
Yeah, yeah, that's how I would recommend doing it because then you don't have to do it by hand.
But what if your source is quinoa, let's say, right? You've cooked the quinoa and then it expands. So you might cook a cup of quinoa, but then you get more than that. Like, how are you measuring all of that?
Yeah, I still use the nutrition facts panel, and the apps have a robust database, so it can pull from it. So you can say like you had half a cup cooked, and it will pull the data from usually the USDA database, which is almost the source of truth for all nutrition information, like nutrition. facts, and it pulls from there to give you a pretty accurate reading.
If someone wants to get an app, what should they be researching? Like, what should they be looking up?
They would look up just nutrition calculator or uh, sometimes they're classified as like calorie counters, but we're not really looking at calories. It's more for the protein. But that entering that, there's like 2 to 3 top options that pop up that would work perfectly fine.
Okay, well, hopefully we've helped people with the whole protein question. And if anyone has more questions or wants to find you, where can they do that?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram at PHX Vegan Dietitian, or my website is www.phxvegandietitian.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was great information, and it was a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise, thanks so much for having me, and I hope that this was so helpful for anyone with questions about plant based protein.
I'm sure it was. Thank you. I hope you found this episode helpful. Please share, rate, leave a review, and follow Plant Based Diet on your favorite podcast listening platform and on the Alternative Food Network YouTube channel, where you can also find recipe videos. If you're on social media, please follow us on Instagram at Alternative Food Network. We also publish a monthly newsletter that includes plant-based recipes, our latest podcasts, and the occasional giveaway. You can sign up by going on our website at alternativefoodnetwork.com and click the newsletter sign up button. Until next time, thanks for listening. All content provided or opinions expressed in this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice. Please seek advice from your doctor or other qualified healthcare practitioner.